Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to The Balanced Woman. Today, we'll be talking about mindful communication and what that really looks like. You know, it's amazing. We often talk about communication, but we never talk about being mindful about it and really what mindful communication is. Hi, guys. Thanks for joining. What mindful communication really means is being present and fully engaged in your conversation. That's what mindful communication is really all about. And what that also does, when you're fully present and engaged in your conversation, what that also does, it helps to enhance, the intimacy between you and your loved one, right? And I think that's key. That's something we really focus on, but that's so important. Half of the reason why many of us females, women, fall short in our relationships is because we lose sight of that communication. And let me take it a step further. I left a part out. Half of the reason why, a majority of the reasons why for us as females, why we lose that connection is because we prioritize our career. Now, there's not a thing wrong with prioritizing our career, because I'm one that prioritizes my career, but I also know, like many of us, that I cannot have my career and my marriage at the same time if I don't prioritize them both. And I think for centuries, as women, we've been told that, we have to be at home, or that's years ago, we have to be at home, or we have to be truly amazing and outdo even the man in our leadership industries. And which causes us to feel or believe that we have to do one or the other. And that's so untrue. It's so untrue. It's amazing because so many of us ambitious women, we are challenged with this distinct idea that we have to be old school. Basically, let me use those words. We have to be old school, and there's traditional norms we should be doing, which causes us, when we aren't living up to those traditional norms, it causes us to have this, we feel guilty, right? Sometimes, as well as we are challenged with conflict within ourselves. Am I doing a good job? Shouldn't I be doing this? And then it leads us to poor communication, because now we don't feel like we're adding up to what we should be doing as parents and or husband and wife and a successful businesswoman or career woman at the same time. And it causes us not to want to talk to our partner, friends, or family because fear of further ridicule, right? And that causes a breakdown as well in communication. So some of the things that we are challenged with and I'm drinking my coffee, guys, today because it's been a crazy day so far, and when I jump off of here, I'm jumping over to something else. And so I want to make it quick. And this is real, right? Because we are challenged on a day-to-day basis with various tasks that we have to complete, whether it be personal or career-wise. They have to be completed. So how do we complete them, right? So yes, I've committed to the Balanced Woman every week. However, I also have 2 other tasks that I must do directly after this, so which pushes me for time. And so I'm going to complete it, right? Because I set out to do it. But I also know the importance of balance, right? And so today, and balance is self-care. I haven't had anything hot. So in this instance, it's self-care for myself. So today, what I wanted to do is just share some things that we are very much challenged by, as well as to help with on the back end of that, to give you some tips and tools as the way in which you can better manage your communication. And as always, I'm pretty good with memorizing things, but a day and time like this, I don't have to. So one of the things I want to talk about, and some key issues that we're challenged with, is our time management, right? And so we have so many things we have to do that what happens oftentimes to break down the communication is they tend to be rushed. So when we will probably have a conversation about A, B, C, and D in the past, we now have to cut it short. we're just talking about A. And as we're running out to do what we have to do, what we start B. So oftentimes our time management is challenged because we're juggling our personal and career life. And so we're trying to manage them both, and they're not fully being fulfilled. And to be really honest, most times our career is being fulfilled and not our personal life. So, sometimes we might have to talk to our significant other or our children, family, friends. It doesn't matter who it is in our personal lives. But we have a meeting we must attend. Excuse me. So what we do is we come in and we say, hey, what's happening? So this is what has to be done, and this is how it needs to be done. But listen, I gotta rush. I gotta do this. So we're struggling with juggling our time. So time management is really a challenge for most of us. And I know I'm not the only one who does this, right? The next thing is role expectation. Okay. So one of the things I know to be true is that I know we as women are supposed to be cooking food. We're supposed to be cleaning the home. We're supposed to be home with the children if they're sick. We're supposed to be combing children's hair or attending their school meetings and so forth. But I can assure you there are many times that we can't do it. I know for myself personally, I know over the years when my children were growing up, my husband had to attend most of my daughter's meetings because I was out working and working after my day job, doing my night job too, which is not what I do, right? But a lot of what we have to do is traditional norms, back to that again. And so what happens? People believe that these are the expectations, that this is our role. You as mother should be doing this. You should be washing your children's hair. You should be taking them to school. You should be attending school meetings. Why? Why do we have to do all those things if we have someone that's willing to sit in the gap or stand in the gap, especially if it's your significant other, the other parent as well, right? So those are just some examples of role expectations. Or even cooking. You hear a lot of people, and up to date, I hear a lot of people saying, let me hurry up, rush in and cook my husband's meal, my wife's meal. And there's nothing wrong with that. But like I said last week, there are times when you just can't get home on time to cook any meal. Look at me. I just said to you all morning, and this is the first thing hot I've had. So sometimes, it's not only are we feeling that we're depriving our loved one or our significant other, but we also deprive ourselves, right? Because of our career. But the reality is those were expectations. They should go across the board for everyone. Why do women, the only thing we do is bear children, right? We do, nobody else can do that. But women are the ones to bear children. So of course, that's the real expectation, that you get married or you're in a relationship and you have children and you stay home and you cook and bake and you care for the household. But the reality is many of us, as much as we love our children and or our significant other and family, we are also career driven. We have ambitions too. And over the last century or so, we have been shown and we have learned that we too can be educated. We too can be passionate about a career. We too can live up to this career. And that's what we're doing. So, those are expectations sometimes. It's kind of stressful for many people, especially if you're married into a big family or you have friends that have big families or your friends believe that. Unfortunately, these are the times we're living in. And, sometimes I look and say, well, if we don't do it, who will, right? So you have to do what you have to do. So you have to do what you got to do in spite of the real expectations. Work-life integration. It's hard sometimes, you may set a plan and say, okay, I'm going to go with my girls on Saturday. We're going to have a cup of coffee, and something pops up to do with work. It might not be something planned. It might be something of great urgency. Like for instance, Anne-Marie, your business, somebody may say the alarm's going off. You have to go and make sure that your salon is operating how it's supposed to. So you might not be able to attend that meeting. So there are things that we have to attend to, but it's kind of hard when you do the work-life integration because we want to make sure that we maintain those relationships with our significant other, friends, and family as well. We must attend to those things that might be of great urgency for our work. So one of the things I often say is that for many of us, when that happens, we tend to walk away feeling, feeling sad sometimes, like, we've disappointed somebody. And as well as our friends or significant other feeling neglected. So how do we balance that, right? And that all comes down to conversation, right? And communication, right? So that's why it's so key to have mindful communication, because as you're communicating along the way, some things may not change, but at least with the open channel, you have the opportunity to say, okay, this is how I'm feeling. And they can say, this is how I'm feeling likewise, right? Okay, the other thing is, some of the key issues that we're challenged with is support systems, right? There are many of us who have a great support system. I say I have a great support system. And then there are those of us who don't. So now we're stuck in this situation of we have to manage both. How do we do that, right? And sometimes it's really, really difficult, because sometimes these support systems can also get burnt out and frustrated, right? Because it doesn't appear to them that we're doing what we should or how we should, thus leaving us feeling very isolated, because at this point we know they're frustrated with us. So now we can't even talk to them. Fear of what they're going to say. You putting your job first. You are putting your business first. Or you're putting that man first. It doesn't matter. One or the other, right? Because I know that happens too. The other thing is prioritizing our boundaries. It's so difficult sometimes to prioritize boundaries. Who do you choose? And who do you say no to? So for us, it might be, who do I choose today? And who might feel like, well, I'm not choosing them today. So we may have to look and say, oh my goodness, how am I going to set these boundaries, right? Well, I think it goes back to communication, right? But as it relates to boundaries, what's most important to you, right? What is most important to you? And for many of us, it's our personal relationships, our personal lives. And that's why it's so important to have that mindful communication, because without it, we'll sink, right? And so setting those boundaries sometimes doesn't just include you setting a boundary. It also includes that significant other, your husband, your friend, your family. Okay, how does this look? This is what I want to set in place, but I'm struggling with doing this because A, B, C, and D. What do you advise? So how do you think we can do this better together, right? So those are some of the prioritizing your ways in which you could prioritize your boundaries. And sometimes we set boundaries. It's funny about boundaries, because I often say to clients, boundaries shift from day to day, right? You may have a boundary today, and tomorrow it just might be null and void because of a certain circumstance. So you have to know when to prioritize those boundaries. But first and foremost, you have to set those boundaries in place. And most times those boundaries aren't as sufficient as they can be when we're trying to do it on our own. So we have to also think about including those partners and or family members in our lives, right? Yeah. So oh my gosh. The other thing we're challenged with most times is how people talk about confidence and assertiveness, right? Many people will look at us because we're trying to do what we have to do, and we are very clear on what we want and have to do. They can deem us as aggressive, bossy, so it's so hard trying to balance all of these things that us as ambitious women have to balance on a day-to-day basis, right? We can walk into an environment, and because we have a clear-cut idea as to how we want it to go, or we've already saw how we need it to be done or completed, we can walk in very direct and say, no, I want that wall green. And when you finish painting that wall green, I want you to put a strip on the end, please. The person may say, or the people may say, well, you haven't even asked how we feel about it. You haven't even asked our opinion on this. You haven't even asked. And in some instances, it does include us asking the broader audience, our broader community, work, husband, wife, whoever it is. However, there are many instances where we have so much on our plate, or a lot on our plate, and we want to be productive. So sometimes being productive is just coming in and being as direct and to the point as possible. So how do we not get people to walk away saying, oh my goodness, it's just very bossy. It's just too aggressive. No, it's just being straight to the point. I want that wall green, and I want you to put a stripe on the end of it. That's it. And we don't sometimes have time to be listening to, well, I don't think that green matches, and that strip should go an inch further in. And no, because we've already thought it through, and we're trying to move on to plan B. But that's to what I mean when I say, mindful communication. It's so important to have that communication, because when we realize the importance of opening up ourselves and inviting other people in to better communicate, we may just have that communication about the conversation around that wall. Okay, you wanted an inch in? Okay, let me do the inch in. But oftentimes we don't, because we're so set on, this is what has to be done, this is how I have to do it, and this is, I have to do it, and everything's I. And the reality is, when you have a significant other, husband or family member or friend that's in your life, it doesn't have to be I, right? And I know sometimes I get labeled as that too. And, quite frankly, I've been labeled as bossy, aggressive all my life. And although I've tailored it and I've tried to not talk or listen, and it really doesn't work for me. So I have to, as many of you, we have to be who we are and be as direct as possible. But one of the things I know to be true is that when you do include your significant other, or those people in your life that mean as much to you as you mean to them, it helps lightly load, where we don't have to be as aggressive per se, right? But assertive and direct. And sometimes we don't even have to think about it, or we could take it off our plate, right? But because we feel that we have so much to do, we don't even give ourselves the opportunity to see that part of a balance is not always having to do everything. Part of a balance is being able to hand over certain things to other people, trust in other people, right? And that's very difficult to do, because one of the things that I know happens with many of us ambitious women, especially in Bermuda or in the corporate world or any world, to be really honest with you, it's so hard to trust, right? And then that overflows into our relationships. Don't ask me why it goes like that, but this is what we deal with on a day-to-day basis, right? But it's so hard to trust when if you tell somebody you want something done a certain way and they disappoint you. It's so hard to trust. We just feel like we have to take the bull by the horns and do it ourselves, thus creating ineffective communication in whatever space we're in, right? And then one of the biggest things that we're challenged with as women is imposter syndrome. Now, I hear a lot about imposter syndrome, and people get on the social media and you're acting a certain way, knowing full well that's not you, or you're viewing something that's not yours, that big 20, 30-inch TV or 70-inch TV, whatever it is, or that there's name brand products, you have them in the background knowing full well they're not yours. Okay, that's one form of me blast. That's one form of imposter syndrome. But what happens when we have to act like we have it all together? What happens when we have to act like we're okay and we're really not, because people's looking at us as ambitious women or leaders in our career, right? All of a sudden, even at home, sometimes our husband or wives, we have to. It appears that we have it all together because we've had such a, oh my goodness, thank you, I look fabulous. I love it. So, what happens when we have to appear to be got it all together and we're really falling apart, right? And this is why, back to this again, this is why it's so important for the mindful communication, because we really don't have to do all of that. We don't. Right? We really, really don't. So what I want to do today is just share some tips with you on how you can have more effective communication in your relationships, more connections, intimacy in your relationships as well. And like I said last week, intimacy is not always sex, right? That's a part of intimacy. So even at work, family members, intimacy is also key. And one of the ways to enhance the connection we have with other people is to learn how to better manage conflict, right? Because overall today, everything I've said usually leads to conflict, right? When we have poor time management, it leads to conflict. Let me just read them all. When we have poor time management, it leads to conflict, right? When there are real expectations of us, it leads to conflict, right? work-life integration. When we don't balance our work life and our family or personal lives, it leads to conflict, right? When we don't have that support system, or we aren't the support system for somebody else because they think we should be, right? Because we're so busy that we can't even recognize that causes conflict. Setting boundaries and prioritizing our boundaries. If we don't do that, that leads to conflict. And appearing to be confident and assertive / bossy and aggressive, that can also lead to conflict, right? And then the imposter syndrome, having to be something you're not, right? Having to be it because at this point, so many people think you're a certain way that now how do you show up any less than, right? So now it's imposter syndrome. So that also it can make us feel very conflicted on the inside, because now I can't even be who I really need to be because you had these expectations. It's like, excuse me, it's like having a big meeting, sitting around a board table. And I remember when I used to work in the prison system, and we used to have board meetings, right? Certain days of the week, just to talk about the numbers, population, and so forth, what's going on. And I remember I used to look around the room. It's amazing, I've been doing this for so many years. I used to look around the room and just look at everybody's posture, right? Even in the way in which we show up sometimes, even our appearance, right? Sometimes we're in certain environments, we want to show up more strong. And although, yeah, man, I can be strong just like you. And you see what I mean? So sometimes the imposter syndrome is really difficult because we now have to play somebody we're not. Thankfully, I will show it up just like this. Praise God for that. But there are so many of us, but I do know there have been times where I've shown up in different cultures, different environments, different fields of work with people, and I've had to be something that I'm not. I've had to dumb myself down for the sake of, I've had to be silent and suck things up for the sake of. So, having imposter syndrome is not just showing up to look like I have it all together. I have all these amazing name brand. I have so much money. No. Having imposter syndrome is also showing up around that boardroom table or in a work environment to pretending to be something that you're not because it appears that you have to be. Whatever happened to people just recognizing that ambitious woman doesn't have to always be bossy or, I saw the other day, I saw a quote from someone that I know, not personally, but I know, and she's also doing a lot of social media. And one of the things I saw is that she basically said she can be busy but be a bee at the same time. And I say, oh, wow, but then that's also a different generation, a younger generation, right? But I look and say, wow, we've come so far to even have to address that, to even have to make mention of that. We are just who we are as we show up, right? And we shouldn't have to think about, we shouldn't even have to verbalize those things. Oh, well, yeah, because I look like this, I'm still going to be a bee and still be. No, just show up. I am an ambitious woman, and this is what it looks like. I like to get my stuff done. I like to be achieving A, B, C, and D, and I want to do it today, and I'm getting it done today. And if I don't get it done today, I'm going to be sure to get it done tomorrow, right? And I have a personal life, and I love my personal life. I love my husband. I love my children. I love my family. I love my friends, and that's all okay. We shouldn't have to show up. Let me get a little step further. We shouldn't have to show up for the sake of looking as though we're someone that we're not. So this imposter syndrome is so big, it's so vast, right? That I find that so many of us struggle in that area. And that's something that I also have to keep my wits about, because it's so easy to slip into being somebody for the sake of somebody else. And we should never have to do that. Yeah, sometimes we may have to scale back a bit, listen more, right? Listen more, actively listen. But the reality is we should never have to be something we're not. We should never have to call our own selves out of our name, because this is for centuries, this is what people have said about us, right? Because we are assertive people, because we are ambitious women, because we know what we want and we're going for it, no matter what, right? And I think one of the things that's challenging for me as one who works with male and female leaders to balance love and career is helping them to understand that I get it. I'm very ambitious. And there's not a day my husband wouldn't tell you I'm working on work. I'm setting my goals and this is what I'm doing. But I think it's so important when we can learn that balance with our personal life, right? Because what happens, God forbid, you lose that job. Where's all those people that's supposed to mean so much to you, right? And then the other thing is, who's that person that you can turn to at night when you go home, they give you that soft landing, right? Who's that person? We still need that person. I heard, that's the other thing I heard a lot of. Oh, I don't need this. Oh, I don't need, if he is not agreeing or she is not agreeing for what I want, I'm going for what I want. Well, that's great. I'm all for you. Please go for exactly what you want, but not at a horrible price that you're going to end up alone or destroying one of the most important relationships or relationships, period, in your life. We all have a personal life. And let me give you a little heads up. Our personal lives, right, is what shows up at work. So when we show up all haywire, like I've been in environments, even as a leader, I've seen people show up. I've seen the insecurity. I've seen people show up and got to prove a point. I've seen all of that. But you know who shows up in me? Me, my personal life. I know who I am in my personal life. So I don't have any point to prove, right? We don't have any points to prove. So I say all that to say, when you get your personal life right, whatever that looks like, because my personal life is totally different from your personal life, things change. So what I want to do is, today, what I really want to do is just give you some clear ways of enhancing your expression, enhancing the way you deliver who you are, how you are, and what you need from whomever you're around, right? Even from yourself. Sometimes we deprive everything about everybody else, including ourselves. So today I just want to give you a few tips as to what that can look like and how you can now start coming to a place of, let's have some mindful communication here, not just for your working environment or your personal life, but for yourself as well. So some of these things I'm going to say to you, I need you to turn the mirror around and look at yourself, right? So one of the things I often say, whenever and remember what I said, most of what's surrounding all of the challenges when it comes to communication in our lives is conflict, unresolved conflict, right? Conflict is healthy. It only becomes unhealthy when it's unresolved. So here are some ways in which you can identify or you can combat conflict effectively. Right? So one of the things I often say to people as a mediator as well, right? Working environment mediator. It's a little different because I have to go in a little bit more direct and intentional. But, the broader picture of what conflict looks like is like, the first thing you have to do is identify how you are feeling first. So if you know there's a situation that must be addressed, you first have to identify how you're feeling about it. Is it annoying to you? Are you frustrated by it? Or are you just outright stressed out? And all of this might not only have to do with the situation at hand, but you have to look at the entire picture, right? How much time you have to have this conversation. All of those things come into play. The next thing I want you to do is, I have so many things written on her. Okay, let me just go through this. The next thing I want you to do, when you do get to that place, that safe space, you already know how you feel. You've given yourself at least 5 to 10 or 30 minutes to calm down. If you recognize the stressful environments or that stressful situation, right? When you do come to the table, the one thing I want you to do is this. Please, this is how I feel when. Okay, not this is how you make me feel. You said this morning, and it could be 1000% correct. Because of what someone said could have put you in an uncomfortable state. However, it's your responsibility, if you want to have effective communication, to lead with I. Because, any conflicting situation, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people, guess what? There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people that play a part in it as well. So always approach a conflicting situation with I feel very uncomfortable when you raise your voice. I feel very uncomfortable when you point your finger. I feel very uncomfortable, you get me? Or unsafe, or my feelings are hurt, or you misunderstood me, and I just really want to clarify what I meant in case you misunderstood me. Okay, the next thing is, I haven't read off on that, but the next thing is I need you to be very much direct. So for instance, I find that when I do mediating in the workplace, people go from the time they walked in the door 10 years ago right along up to that date, right? And we don't have time for that, right? What is the main challenge? Right? So it might just be, I don't like when you point your finger at me, or I don't like that you overlook me for every promotion. And I feel like I'm being targeted because the previous manager didn't like me. Straight to the point, right? And many times people can't do that, but I come straight to the point with that, right? Be direct. And even in your marriage or your relationship, babe, you know what? I really feel, my feelings are really hurt just at the thought of you thinking, I don't care. Because sometimes what happens is when we are very much ambitious, our partners tend to say it. You don't care nothing about us. You don't care about this marriage because you're never here. You don't care about what happens with us. You don't even know what's happening with us because you're so consumed with your career, right? And so something like that, you can say, babe, you know, I'm really hurt that you could think I don't care anything about us. I do. I love us. And I am struggling with having these conversations. I'm struggling with balancing my work and us. And you know what? I need your help. Just that simple. Okay? The other thing I want you to do is actively listen. Now, while we like to talk a lot as women, we like to talk, we like to get our point across, and we want to be right. Most of us, we want to be right. So when we start a conversation, we've also started at the end. Basically, it's not my fault and I'm right. You get me? And so, we need to also be active listeners, right? So active listening is not just sitting there like, active listening is showing respect to your partner, showing empathy, understanding. You know, when you're having that conversation, lean in. Okay, babe. Okay. Just listen. And I'm saying okay, babe, because I'm saying it verbally, but say it in your mind, right? Watch your eye movements. You know, I have a client, I love her to death, and there's facial expressions, they'll tear you apart. They tear me apart in laughter, right? Because they come so often. But when we are going through conflict and situations, those facial expressions mean just as much as your words, right? Your hand, you're moving about. If somebody's talking, you're sitting there. Shit, opening a chip bag. You're not actively listening. You're really being disrespectful. And think about it. Would you want somebody to do that to you? And it's your point. What is the objection? What is the objective of having a conversation, right? When you have conflict in situations, it's to resolve it. So when you're showing up like in that way, are you really being intentional about resolving those situations? You're not. And sometimes you show up like that. And you would say, I want it resolved, but you only want to resolve from your end. That's ineffective communication. And your conflict will last forever. And it would only get extremely horrible, right? Leading in divorce for many people, right? So maintain your eye contact and always have that open-ended conversation. Never start with, well, if you wouldn't have did this and you wouldn't have done that and if you wouldn't have said this, ask. I didn't understand what you meant when you said, I'm not getting that promotion. What did you mean? Or, you know, I don't have as much qualifications. I don't have enough qualifications for that promotion. Could you break that down to me? Because I am qualified. And this can also mean that they don't have all your qualifications or something might have been missed or overlooked, right? And even in your marriage, babe, that's not true. I do love us, right? And I'm so sorry you felt like that, but what did you mean when you said, I don't care anything about this marriage? What did you mean about that, by that when you said it? So it's just having those conversations. The other thing is balancing. Oh my gosh, that was a struggle for me. Balancing work and home life at home. How do you do that? Because I know for many of us, and me, up until 2 years ago, it was coming in, leaving your job, then you're coming in and you're still working. You're making dinner, or you're preparing dinner, or you're preparing yourself for the next day, and you're not engaged with your spouse or your family members because you're so on work mode, right? And you're rushing the conversation, like I said earlier, you're rushing the conversation because you got to get back to work. So how do you balance that? Well, one of the things I often say to clients is you have to be intentional about every and anything that you do, unless you're an on-call surgeon or doctor, and even the on-call ones, they have time off, so they usually have them in rotation, right? But if it's your week and you're there to save someone's life, set the intention, babe. You know, this week I'm on call, so we're going to do everything according. We're going to come in, we're going to set the table, we're going to sit on the couch, whatever we do, be in tune with each other's conversation. Now, if that phone goes off because there's an emergency, the understanding's already been made because we already know as a couple that you're on call. So it wouldn't cause a whole lot of conflict. However, what most people do, they run in, rushing around, and as soon as the husband or wife says, "What? Oh my God, what happened?" Well, I just wanted to say, well, wait, I'm just doing some work. And my goodness, I'm trying to get this laptop. I'm trying to do. Because then it goes back to the husband or wife saying, I don't feel like we are important anymore, as important as your career, right? So how do you manage stuff like that? It's just to listen and be direct, be respectful, right? Have empathy and compassion. Because I often say, when we have all these challenges coming up against us as women, we carry them everywhere we go. And we are also, we are often plagued with imposter syndrome because we don't know how else to act. The expectation is that all these things that's going on in our career life, everybody's thinking all these things about us, right? I could take this a little further, even as much as having family and friends. The expectation is that, oh, look at her, she's got it all together. She don't need help. And then, you know what happens? We don't get help because it looks like we have it all together sometimes. And the reality is, it's our responsibility as well to tell people, I don't have it all together. I'm struggling, right? And no, we're not going to go work and tell everybody we're on the board table. But, you know, a mental health day, nothing ever stopped because someone had to have a mental health day. Because we've all been challenged with mental health. Okay, so that's something I also want to bring about. Some of my clients, they say, you know, my goodness, as a director or running certain companies, right? They will say, oh my goodness, I can't take a day off because I'm gonna. Well, guess what? That's why you set somebody up to work alongside of you, so that if you do have to take a day off, or if you do have to be off island, or if something of great urgency happens, you have this person completely next to you that can pick up the ball and keep running with it, right? That's all about leadership. And that's important, right? It's not about you and only you. It's about knowing that I'm human. I do have a personal, and I do need a personal life. I do have things that pop up at the last minute. I do have days where I just don't feel like it. I do have those moments where I feel broken. I do have those moments where I just bust out crying because I don't know what else to do. I do have those moments when I don't feel like being bothered. These are all real things. But I think what's happened with society, women have been made to feel like you have to be tough. I'm amazing because I'm a leader and I can get that job done. I can get in that boardroom. If I have to fire somebody or betray another woman, I can do that. I can do that well without blinking. It's so unnecessary. So the other thing is being vulnerable in your relationships, right? It's so important being vulnerable in all your relationships, but more so in your intimate relationship. You're married, your significant other. Being vulnerable, what all that does, it causes a greater a tightness, a connection, right? It enhances a level of intimacy between two people. It also builds a level of trust like no other, right? And so I often say to people, when they say, well, Tina, how vulnerable do you want me to be? I'm still here. And I say sometimes being vulnerable is just expressing your fears, your concerns, There's things that we deal with on a day-to-day basis. And I think what happens sometimes is that when we become less vulnerable, is because we're trying to, that imposter syndrome again, we're trying to be perceived as something that we're not. And where did that really come from? So today, as I'm closing out, I implore you to be yourself. Be yourself and know that, right? You can be vulnerable at any given time. You can be vulnerable at work. If you have a staff member that works right alongside of you, which you should, right? It should be okay to take in the office and say, listen, today it's not a good day. I'm going to leave half a day and I'm going to trust you with A, B, C, D for the rest of the day. I'm only an email away, not WhatsApp or call. I'm only an email away if there's anything of great urgency. And in your marriage or relationship, listen, today I'm having a challenging day. And these are my first, I'm having a hard day today because I failed. I thought I can do A, B, C, and D, and I failed, or just saying, having a vulnerable day is having a point of vulnerability with your partner could just mean, I didn't know this is how it would look. When I got that career, I was so proud to know that I strive to that position, right? That leadership position that I didn't think this through. I mean, I never thought we'll get to this place, and it's been going on so long that I don't even know how to fix it. So being vulnerable is also an instance of being able to find somebody or have somebody in your life that can help you not feel so heavy and carry the load on your own. Okay, so today I just wanted to share that, and I have a busy day as well. So trust me, my day today has been busy, and my day started me being very vulnerable with a client. And it's okay. And last year this time, I would have never been vulnerable. I could have never been as vulnerable as I am today. You know why? Because for centuries, we've been made to believe that we're strong. My mom is a strong person. And what does strength really look like? Strength doesn't mean that you don't cry. Doesn't mean that you don't have moments of mental health. Doesn't mean that you don't have moments of, I messed up and I wish I could have done it differently. Doesn't mean that you don't have moments of, I've overate, or I haven't eaten, I feel weak, or I said something to somebody that I shouldn't have. Doesn't mean that you're not going to ask for help. You go to somebody that's just aspiring to catch up to in a business. Somebody might be the CEO of one of the top companies around the world, and you have a business of three staff. You might aspire to have a leading organization. Why can't you go and ask this person, listen, I only have 3 staff, but this is what I aspire to accomplish. How can I do this? So being vulnerable is key, and it's important in any progression, right? But most importantly, being vulnerable in your relationship with your husband and or wife, your intimate partner, is key. Because without that solid foundation, what happens at home? Without that solid foundation, what happens? You fail, right? You could be failing anywhere else. When you go home and you have that solid foundation with your loved one, things are so much better. So much better. And so today, I really implore all of you who are challenged in your marriages and a relationship because you don't know how to balance, go home and have a conversation and come from the I perspective and how you feel about things. Just to start that conversation. And remember, it's not always about you talking, but also listening. And know that I'm here. That's what I do, right? I'm all about helping you to remain married, but not just remain married for the sake of on paper, but live a fulfilling marriage and have a successful career at the same time. Because after all, that's living, right? That's living. I have to keep coming back to, I noticed my daughter said, oh my goodness, Mom, you look beautiful. You look fabulous, right? On her. And I have to say that is attributed to the less stress. That is because I now have to learn how to balance. Do I have it all together? Am I perfect at balancing it? Absolutely not. But I have a partner in my personal life. I had several partners in my personal life that when I fall off track, they're there to get me right back on one. So think about that. Your personal life is key, Because then, like I said last week, it's supposed to be you two, your personal life against the world, not the world against you and your marriage or your personal life. That's a lose-lose situation. Your personal life, your husband and wife, it's us against the world. That's a win-win. Okay, guys, so I'll see you next week. I gotta run. I got things to do today, as you do. And I just want to say thanks for joining. And please feel free to send me a DM of anything you wish for me to share or answer via live, or if you just want to connect, I'm here. Okay? Talk soon. Have an amazing day.